Hey, what's up? Hope your day's going great. So today's video obviously is not about music, but I do feel it's an interesting question. And the reason I'm making this video is just because I was curious about this and wanted to find the answer. And what I found online was very disheartening because others are asking the same question and they are getting treated with complete rudeness, just being like, are you that dumb for actually thinking that light shines through the moon? And just a bunch of hateful name calling people idiots and stuff. I was just like, dude, it's just a question that somebody's trying to figure out. You don't got to be rude about it. And then I came across another article about how this madness needs to stop about being able to see the stars through the moon. And he pointed out how, or this person, I don't know if he's a he or she, but this person pointed out how apparently there's a bunch of countries who have a crescent moon with stars where there shouldn't be on their flags. And you can see this like in bookstores, you can see it pretty much everywhere throughout a bunch of paintings in history. And pretty much this person was just saying how everyone's just wrong, and how we should address this is kind of like, let's say for instance, if we saw a kid who drew it like that, we should tell him politely like, oh no, that's not how it works, and then that's how we can get rid of this issue. But the problem here is that we're not looking at drawings, we're looking at pictures that are taken. So then that's why people are asking this question. And so since I felt curious about this, and since everyone seems to be on the offensive, like, oh, you're an idiot for even thinking this question, I would like to share, I guess, my narrow point of view of my understanding of this physical world. And if I'm wrong, please let me know at least what books I should go and read, because I am someone who's at least aspiring to be a physicist. And so at least point me in the right direction if you got the answers. So let me at least share with you my understanding of how this world works. So let's break down reality. So when we start studying physics, we learn that everything that we can possibly perceive consists of a perfect duality, which is light and sound, or matter and vibration. And somehow this duality makes everything. All right. So according to Einstein and his theory of E equals mc squared, to my understanding, E is energy, m is like matter or mass, and c squared is the speed of light. All right, so what this means is that when you get matter or whatever it is traveling at the speed of light, it somehow converts to energy, right? What this also means is that we can come to some sort of congruency that these light particles do contain some type of physical property. And I can say this confidently due to the simple existence of black holes and the claim that the gravitational force is so strong that light itself cannot escape its force. Which for me then means that to some level, light particles are made of something, right? Matter, whatever. All right, so before going further, I need to clarify, I guess, the definition of a wavelength, and more specifically like frequencies in hertz. And so since we can agree that everything is here, or like say for instance, when studying sound, you get the same phenomenon that it's a wave pattern that's going on. So what's an interesting characteristic about a wave is that it has a crest and a trough, so a top and a bottom, on, off, rarefaction or compression. So, and this phenomenon is seen everywhere, even with sound. And so here's how sound travels. Here's a visual representation. And just for the people who are interested, this is a formula to find the frequencies. All right, so when we measure these waves, we then plug in the numbers with this equation, and the result that we get out of it, we call it hertz, or we measure it in what we call units hertz, right? And so pretty much what hertz is how many cycles or these waves pass within a certain time. All right, so one of the first things that we learn about light is that when it comes into existence, it it automatically already is traveling at the speed of light. It doesn't accelerate into the speed of light. It doesn't need time to warm up. It's just instantaneously traveling at the speed of light. Okay, so that's the first fact. One of the things that we learned is that we can actually slow down light, and one of the famous examples of doing this is by using a prism. All right, so yeah, so then the prism, what it does, it refracts the main light into the 7 primary colors, right? Red, Roji Biv. So now let's look at this a little bit further. When looking at this graph right here, we're able to see that what we're able to visually see is a very small sliver of the spectrum of wavelength and frequencies. Very small. All right. So then scientists decided to measure this oscillation, that I guess this wave pattern that was happening with light. And what they found out was that red was somewhere between 400 and 484, and worked its way up to violet, which is 668 up to 789, right? That's the terahertz that it's going in. And so what a lot of people, I guess, tend to overlook or not really think about is that the only difference between the color red and violet is how fast this light particle is vibrating. That's it. Okay. Side note, one thing that I think is kind of found interesting, there is this thing, such a thing as called as ancient Solfeggio frequencies, and allegedly these frequencies also carried with them a special trait. And so here's what they are: ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, and you can see what they're measured in hertz. And what I found really interesting about this is that 528 hertz was considered to be, I guess, the miracle tone. And if we look back to this graph right here of where this sits in our color spectrum, it's right barely at green, like barely escaping yellow. And this is the color that we see everywhere in nature. Like, just look at any plant and you know what I mean. So, but yeah, it's that's the green, that's what's being emitted. That vibration is not an accident why we see that greenish thing. It's all interlocked with this vibration, sound, light weirdness. Anywho, going back to light. Since we've already established that light is pretty much like a wave, this makes sense to me as to why is it that, like, when you see a shadow on the floor, it's not like a perfect defined cut line. Because think about it, the sun is a single light source. So for me, when I was younger, I used to think, oh, why does a shadow look blurry? Why isn't it like a definitive line? And since we can agree that it's a wave and vibrations, this makes more sense to me as how now it gets a little fuzzy around the edges. All right, but now let's talk about quantum physics. So the double slit experiment is by far one of the most strangest things that has come out of the physics world. So pretty much this is how the experiment went. Let's say you had, let's say you had a gun, and let's say you had a back sensor to see where the bullet's gonna land, right? But in between you and that sensor, you put a metal barrier with only 2 slits opening, so like an 11, think of it like that. And so we think, okay, if I start shooting this bullet, if it hits the metal, it's not gonna hit the sensor, therefore not gonna pick up. But whatever bullets do go through these slits should pick up directly behind the sensor. All right, so scientists have said, all right, well, let's try to do this, but with light. And lo and behold, what do they get? Not that. So scientists found an interference pattern. All right, so their first response was, okay, maybe it's because we were just flashing light through the tubal slits that it somehow interfered with itself. So let's really test this idea and shoot a single particle of light at a time. Now it should definitely work like a regular bullet, right? And it goes in a straight line. Nope. Still got an interference pattern. So then scientists were like, what the hell is going on? And the best that they can express it is pretty much how waves interfere if they were to travel through a double slit, like so. So then scientists were like, okay, well, let's put a sensor on the slits to see which one of the two it goes through, to see where craziness is going on. So then, craziness, lo and behold, what happened? They started to act normal. And the light particles went in a straight line and went directly behind the thing. So now, one side note thing that I want to get back to about this whole interference pattern. If anybody out there who's studying this more intensely, I'm curious to know, because what was interesting is that this light particle was it was based on probability, and it actually had a higher probability to want to land in the center directly behind the metal plate, so where it should hit the least, essentially. But yeah, anyone studying this, I'm curious to know if this probability ratio is somehow similar, like, to the Fibonacci sequence. Curious to know, but yeah. But anyways, going back. So what quantum physics ended up telling us is that light is both a particle and a wave. But the claim that came after that is what's even more interesting. And it was that they said when there was an observer, somebody watching I should say, then light would act normal. But if it was not being watched, then it would act as a wave. And so then they further added was because there was an observer, it's the only reason why it came to act the way it's supposed to be. Or I guess came into being, I should probably say. Because Albert Einstein did not like quantum mechanics at all. Like, he even, quote, and I'm quoting him, he said, "I can't accept quantum mechanics because I'd like to think the moon is there even if I'm not looking at it." So, my only speculation that I could conclude from this is that maybe, let's say, since now we can agree that almost nobody ever looks up to the sky anymore. So, can it be, since as a collective whole, we are no longer looking up, can it be that these light rays from the stars are acting like waves? And that's why we could see the stars through the moon? I don't know. Again, I'm just curious and I'd like to know the answer. Because, yeah.